Hello.
Good evening, Graham.
Hello, Charles.
Good evening, Anthony. And last week, of course, we had a sudden finish with our guest, Peter Bruce, to the extent that we didn't get the chance to thank Peter for being with us from Field Music, and what an enjoyable evening it was. So if we just start this evening by saying thank you to Peter for being our guest on our 200th episode. And can we also say
Yeah,
thank you to Anthony as well for all the editing that he's done in those 200 episodes, putting up with our ridiculous comments, the slightly dodgy lines. I don't mean what we say, but the actual
there are no
technology that's
dodgy lines from
involved.
us, Charles.
And I get to say thank
Yeah,
you to you, Graham, because I've thoroughly enjoyed doing these. And
yeah.
maybe we should
I
just
think
reintroduce ourselves as
we
well.
also need to we also need to say that Peter Bruce, who kindly did the whole show of Field Music thing. First of all, I think he was our first guest interviewee who ever talked about Wittgenstein, which meant I actually felt a little bit out of my depth for the
Yeah,
first time ever. And secondly, for anybody who doesn't know Field Music's music, and they are one of the most underrated and best bands of the
absolutely.
last 15, 20 years. If you imagine XTC doing songs by the High Llamas, or 10cc doing songs by Led Zeppelin,
Yeah.
or in their latest album, Limits of Language, if you imagine early 1980s Peter Gabriel, maybe from Peter Gabriel 3 or Peter Gabriel 4 era, doing remixes of field music themselves, you don't even get close to what they're like because it's almost impossible to sum them up, except they pack a lot into 3 4 minute songs.
And the changes as well that they've made through those years. I mean, they are shapeshifters as musicians, which is really how it should be. It seems to me. It would be all too easy just to stick to a formula, but they don't. They like to set themselves the challenges. They like to break boundaries, and I think that's. I mean, that's why the word field is probably there because it's fields without fences, if you like. Yeah.
So they live up to the spirit of the 70s without sounding entirely 1970s.
You briefly mentioned High Llamas in your opening there, and
Mm.
this leads us actually into the first topic. And we're going to be brisk tonight. We're going to do this in a brisk session. So the first of which is that Sean O'Hagan from the High Llamas. Sean's also a journalist, isn't he, from memory?
Yeah, he tried that a bit, but he was in Micro Disney in the late 80s. It's
Yeah.
sort of indie pop band, sort of from Ireland. And then he formed the High Llamas about 1991. And he tried journalism, but the High Llamas had been his pursuit for, the last 25 years or more. And for a time, they were really influential
Yeah.
in the 90s because with albums like Gideon Gay and Hawaii, they were the first band to look back at the era of easy listening in terms of people like Burt Bacharach or John Barry,
Yeah.
or even bits of the Beach Boys and Pet Sounds' the Smile album, and turn it into an art form and realize it was better than just being easy listening, because easy listening was a dirty word in rock and roll for a long time. And they brought it back into fashion and led accidentally to things like the Mike Flowers Pop Orchestra, which had a big hit.
Oh
and I
yes.
saw and I saw touring about 96 and 97, and they weren't that good. But the High Llamas were brilliant, and even ended up on V2 records briefly, which were related to Virgin.
Mm.
That's how sort of popular they were. But since those days in the late 90s, early noughties, although Sean's kept going and kept releasing albums, and he's got a new album out now called Hey Panda. Yeah, the days of them being almost a big band have certainly gone. But so I saw them at Hebden Bridge at the Trades Club last Saturday night,
Yeah.
and they were obviously brilliant as always. But some of our friends, including James Littlewood, who used to do Charm magazine with me in
Yeah.
Charm gigs, he insisted on talking to Sean afterwards. So I thought, all right, well, I'll join in. And Sean was a nice bloke, is a nice bloke. But when we were chatting to him, the sad aspect was that he's actually ill, and he's been ill for a while, and he's still
Wow.
he's still playing some gigs even though he is ill. And I thought, oh, that's not good.
Oh.
And then on top of that, the other interesting thing was that he had a young female backing singer on stage,
Yeah.
uh, just a little bit long from on stage, and she spent the whole gig. I mean, she was good. She spent the whole gig looking at him,
Yeah.
and it turns out that was his daughter, Livy.
All right. Yeah.
And it was so sweet seeing his daughter doing all the backing vocals
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and the harmonies on stage with her dad, who's sadly ill. It was quite touching.
Yeah. Yes. So, did you ask him? No, normally, Graham, you can't resist pointing out the defects as well as the good things about bands that have been around a long time, and it doesn't always necessarily go well when you say these things. So, what did you say to Sean? Was it one of your more, um, given that he's not necessarily in particularly good health at the moment, were you more measured in what you said?
Yeah, I think I just praised them because
Yeah.
the High Llamas were even at their peak in the mid to late 90s. They were never going to be a big band, really. It
No, no,
didn't matter which label they're on. They didn't do that sort of music, so
no.
you could never like advise the High Llamas to do anything different than what they did because they have their own sound and their own style,
Yeah.
and that's it. They're they don't, despite their flair for melody and the fact
Mm.
they're related to the pop world, a little bit like Stereolab, of
Yes.
whom Sean O'Hagan was a member for a little while.
Was
They're
he?
a bit like Stereolab. They're related to pop, but they're not pop, and they're
No.
never going to be pop. So for once, I didn't see how I could possibly advise Sean O'Hagan on how to make the High Llamas either better or more successful.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Graham, you've been watching an Italian film and you've been watching it in Italian. It's a film from 1972. Federico
Yeah,
Fellini, Roma.
what a disaster! I got it at the Fellini Museum in Rimini when I was in Italy on holiday
Yeah.
recently, and I bought Roma because it appeared to say on the sleeve that it had subtitles. It wasn't just Italian. So I bought it on that basis because it's from 1972. I've never seen the film, and so I wanted to see it. So and it was a remastered version by the Cineteca Bologna, which
Yes.
obviously is from Bologna, where I'd just been. So the whole thing just
It all
perfect
makes
for the
sense,
holiday
Graham.
to buy that film. So I bought it, and
Yeah.
it's got a cast that I largely don't recognize apart from Fellini himself who turns up in it, and Gore
Mm.
Vidal's got the great American critic and writer's
Oh,
got a cameo role in it, but there's not many famous people in it.
no.
But I still want to see it, and I slapped it on, you know, get ready to place play, and I was
Mm.
looking for the subtitles bit, and there was two bits in English, two bits in Italian, and I searched the English bits. There was no sign of subtitles, and I thought, well, there's no way the subtitles will be under an Italian word because that would defeat the purpose. You know, they're going to be under an English word. So I just started playing the film and realized that there were no subtitles. It was entirely in Italian. So I thought, what the hell? I'll watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I
How
watched
was
the whole
it?
thing.
Was it like when we went to watch the Russian company in the swimming pool in Edinburgh, not speaking a word of English,
Yeah,
in a production of Othello?
yeah. It was like that. It was really enjoyable. It looked great. You got some pleasure from it, and you got some ideas by watching it. But
Hmm.
I frankly didn't understand the dialogue, and wasn't. I mean, I was fairly certain the general drift of the film, but I wasn't entirely sure about the details. And then I got to the end of the film, and I checked all the various things in it again, and it turns out that under the Italian word was actually the English subtitles, so I could have gotten these subtitles. So I've since watched it again with subtitles.
And was that a better
It
experience? Did you
It
learn anything
it
new?
was, yes. It's a very surreal and earthy portrait of Rome, as
Mm.
the title suggests,
Mm.
and it keeps on flipping back in time from the Second World War, when Fellini was young
Yeah.
himself, to the present day, or rather 1972, because it came out in
72.
72. And so it goes backwards and forwards and deals with Rome's history a little bit. It's not really a historical film,
Mm.
and it's more about the culture of people and the culture of the city, and it's really entertaining, and he deals with hippies and protesters and a bit of left wing politics because that was all big at the time across
Yeah.
the Western world, and especially Italy. Italy was a massive era of left wing activism, and
Mm.
it's got three brilliant set pieces where you don't need to actually understand the dialogue. And the first one, which is clearly indebted to Jean-Luc Godard's Weekend, which came out in 1967, it's a long series of tracking shots of a film crew with Fellini himself arriving in the outskirts of Rome in the pouring rain and driving along the ring road into the centre of town. And as they drive in slowly, there's a whole tableau of things going wrong, like car crashes, riots, riots by protesters,
Mm.
everything going wrong. And it's just a magnificent piece of filmmaking.
Mm.
There's a great surreal bit where they've got a group of cardinals in a large auditorium who are holding a fashion show, and you get a succession of people walking the catwalk who are religious people
Yeah.
dressed in strange religious gear, and that's quite funny. And then the film finishes on another great 5 minute sequence of lots of young people on motorbikes and wearing helmets, which is a bit bizarre because if you look at Italians now in Italy when they're on the mopeds, they very rarely wear helmets.
You never have the
So
helmets on, do you?
yeah, they're all wearing helmets and they're driving in the dark with their lights on the motorbikes, quite dramatic looking. And they're
Yeah.
going around the whole central area of Rome for about 5 minutes in the dark. And you get to see all these great Roman landmarks from the
Yeah.
city. And then the film ends. It's almost like it's a farewell to Rome.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic. So eventually I did enjoy the film once I actually managed how to work the DVD.
We'll be coming back to Rome with very soon with the second installment of Gladiator 2.
Gladiator 2. Yeah,
So,
but it doesn't.
so we'll be returning to Rome, no doubt, because
Yeah,
it's such a
I'm
good.
worried about that film already. You know why?
Go on, why are you worried?
Because Russell Crowe may be a little bit macho and he may
Yes,
be a sort of man's man, but
yeah,
he's got a lot of personal charm.
yes.
And Paul Mescal is a great actor and he's good at everything he does. And he has got some charm, but
Mm.
it's very low key. It's not really broad brushstrokes. And Gladiator requires broad brushstrokes to be effective as a
So
entertaining movie. So
let's see how
I'm
that
slightly
works
worried.
out, then. That's setting him up for a bit of a fall there, and
Mm.
we'll
Well,
see.
only I could review a film I haven't seen.
I was going to say, you wouldn't have sensed that from the preview on Graham Norton, where it was all high fives and positivity with Denzel Washington in fine form on there. Now, Graham, next topics we're going to move on to two gallery stories. The first of which is the new William Morris Arts and Craft exhibition that's running in York Art Gallery. York Art Gallery. This is the second location to show this exhibition. And actually, it's connected with a place that we always go to in the summer at the Edinburgh Festival. We go to the Dovecote Studios, and Dovecote Studios have played a huge part in this William Morris exhibition. And indeed, I met the author of a new book about William Morris, and in connection with this exhibition. So
That's good.
yeah, so I just happened to be there on the day that she was there. And
Excellent.
yeah, and so we had an excellent chat. So this has been, well, I'm really pleased that this. I love William Morris's work, and I thought this was a story well told. Even to the extent that all the colours that have been chosen, as ever, actually, with every York Art Gallery museum, they choose colour patterns in each of the different rooms to suit the artworks or the mood that they want to create. So, so that constantly changes with every exhibition. And indeed, for this one, they went again with colours that were in keeping with William Morris. And even when you first enter, you'll notice there's a frieze across the glass based on a William Morris work. So I think that the care that's been taken with this exhibition is exemplary.
It's almost like sub-Tate modern. It's almost like
Yeah. Yes.
When they reopened York Art Gallery and started charging for exhibitions, which they hadn't previously done. It's like they took a good look at what made Tate Modern good, and they now do a small scale version of that. They're very good at what they're doing.
Mm. What did you learn from the exhibition, Graham?
Well, I learned a few things. First of all, the history, because it goes back in the history of early wallpaper, mainly dominated by the French. Then I found out that William Morris and Co., the company, wasn't just William Morris. There was these other great designers and artists of wallpaper. And also that Sanderson's took over Morris and Co. when they got in financial trouble. And really this exhibition is happening because of Sanderson's, which still obviously exist and are still successful.
Is that the Sandersons in Harrogate? Is that
It must
Sanderson?
be. I
Yeah,
would guess it was linked. I mean, I'm not certain, but I would guess
it's
it was
got to,
linked.
isn't it? It would make sense, wouldn't it?
Hmm hmm And also, what I've learned as well is that there was some other great designs for wallpaper by people who weren't William Morris in the exhibition,
Mm.
because he didn't dominate. Ironically, his prints, his art did not dominate the exhibition. Art usually stood out as being the best to me, but there were other designs which were really good as well. He was by no means the only great wallpaper designer that Britain produced in the 19th century and the early 20th century. And so the X-Men gives you a great feel for the whole movement and also the arts and crafts movement. It isn't just about William Morris or William Morris's wallpaper. You get a feel for the whole sweep of that whole genre of art. And so
The
I
other
thought it was an excellent
that
exhibition.
was very strong within it was how he was trying to make so wallpaper previously before William Morris had been very much for the upper classes. It was something beyond the ability for most people to have wallpaper, and he took a different approach to creating wallpaper that meant that it became more utilitarian. And part of that actually would be that he would limit the numbers of colors that he would use to make wallpaper. So he was determined as a lifetime socialist to bring that principle into making wallpaper available for the masses. And I thought that was one of the most fascinating elements of the exhibition, showing how that was the
It
case and how
was,
actually that indeed wasn't just a principle, it did actually happen.
but he didn't really lead to the populism of wallpaper to the masses. He led to the populism of wallpaper to the middle classes.
That's a
And
fair
he was
point.
a staging point on the way to the working classes also
Yeah.
having wallpaper. But
Yes.
what he did was that before him, wallpaper was for people who were seriously rich.
Yeah.
And after him, and during his work, it was for people who were middle class and who wanted to show how sophisticated and what great taste they had. And
Yeah.
that's what he did. But the only way you could actually get to the masses, apart from mass production, which William Morris, as part of the arts and craft movement, didn't really like mass production
No.
because these were people, him and John Ruskin and the pre-Raphaelite artists, they all believed in medieval standards of individual craftsmanship and
Yeah.
they were against mass production. So it didn't actually lead to mass produced wallpaper. But you're right, he did tend to go towards, he tried to get towards the cheaper end of the market if he could. And usually that meant only using two blocks
Two
for his
blocks.
wallpaper
Yeah. Yeah.
because the more blocks you have, the more expensive the process and the
Mm.
more expensive the outcome and the more expensive it is to buy the wallpaper. So he would quite often do something brilliant with two or three blocks. Whereas other designers that you saw in the exhibition, they would like take 8 blocks to achieve something brilliant. So he was even compared to the rest of the very good ones, he was literally a cut above.
I went round the exhibition with Helen Walsh, Dr. Helen Walsh, who's the curator there.
Mm-mm.
And what was interesting was how many blocks featured in one of the early works, long time before Morris, and the contrast, how it had reduced and reduced and reduced and reduced the
Mm.
number of blocks. Whereas this early work, which I think was in the first room,
Yeah,
which I think was the French work that you were referring to, it required a considerable number of blocks by comparison to make wallpaper. I thought the exhibition again showed that side of it very well. I think it's been put together really, really well from
I
that.
agree entirely. Yeah.
So I think it's a really rewarding exhibition, and I would urge as ever. I know now, as we've discussed before, this element that you do pay to go and see exhibitions like this
It
in your.
was worth the money.
But I think that's the key. If
Mm.
it's worth the money, and unquestionably this exhibition is worth the money, then absolutely fine. As was the Monet inspired
Well, yeah, I
exhibition.
mean, I have to say that for the first time ever, I've been to two exhibitions
Yeah.
at York Art Gallery in the space of 3 or 4 months. It's
Mm.
never happened before
No.
in the
Well,
same year. So they really have since they reopened, they've done a really good job, I think.
so they were hoping for maybe 45 to 50,000 visitors
Mm.
for Monet, and they got 70,000 visitors for the Monet. So
Mm.
they were bang on the Monet, as it were, with that one.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. I
I
like
think, I mean, interesting to see. Helen didn't mention to me, what projected figures there might be for what they would like to hit as a target audience with this. But again, I think it's got broad appeal. So we'll see how it does. Now, the
Well, I have
contrast.
to say that our curtains at home are actually William Morris curtains. They're his pattern called Willow Boughs.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
as you know, he specialised in foliage, with a little bit of
Foliage, yes,
wildlife,
yes.
and they're so full of life. And he doesn't try and do any fake 3D techniques, but
No.
he creates so much life in what he does. It's never just flat line there.
Mm.
And I mean, this is going to sound ridiculous. It's possibly the most ridiculous statement I've made in 200 episodes of
In
To Be Was a
201
Small
first
Car.
episode, the
I'm
West
going to say that I absolutely love my
Curtains.
curtains.
I absolutely love my Graham. Every time I walk into the house, it's the first thing I comment on how gorgeous the curtains are.
Of
Now,
course you do.
by contrast, Graham, rather sad news that Watermark Gallery, run by two friends of mine,
Mm.
is closing. Reasons behind this?
Well, I think it's because the lease that involved not huge rent has run out, basically. So I think it's basically a financial thing. Now they do say they're trying to find a bigger and better space.
Yes.
So rather than this being a defeat, they're saying this is actually a staging post towards a victory. Whether that's the case, I do not know, but that's
I,
what they're saying.
I would hope that happens.
Mm.
I really would. But, obviously, you can't take decisions lightly, but let's hope that that can be the case because they have made, as their name would suggest, they've made a mark on the Harrogate gallery scene, and it's an
I
ever
agree.
changing, it's an ever changing scene in Harrogate. But I like it when an independent gallery is there, and there are several very good examples. We've championed the work of Andy Stewart's gallery. We've championed the work, of course, the Red House originals, and we've featured Watermark before. But it's let's hope that
Yeah.
this can just be a brief stopping point, and that they can return. And if they
Well,
do,
they've been
well,
so active. I mean,
yeah,
put it this way, they opened in 2020
yeah,
in Harrogate less than 4 years ago,
yeah.
or about 4 years ago. And since then, they've done 23 exhibitions
Mm,
featuring 90 artists.
mm,
They've exhibited a total of 1,250 paintings, plus jewelry, plus ceramics. So
yeah,
they're a really go-ahead, dynamic, you
mm,
know, gallery owners, and they really
mm,
need to get a new space for the Watermark Gallery because it was a good place.
yeah. Well, we wish them all the very, very best, and let's see what happens. Now, Graham, this is topic number 5. I'll just read this out. This is Graham. Being impressed by the best sound system I've heard at a prog rock event, where you gave a talk earlier this week at the magnificent All Saints Church in Kirkby Overblow, which is indeed a magnificent church. Graham,
It's big as
how
well.
come it was there? How did that happen?
Well, it's a fundraiser for the church and also for Harrogate Community Radio, which
Ah,
also hosts this podcast. And the reason that Harrogate Community Radio are involved is that Alan Smythe, who I
yeah,
worked with on Charm gigs years ago, he did the sound and the visuals sometimes. He's a
yeah.
great bloke, deeply involved, one of the founders of Harrogate Community Radio.
Mm,
He was doing the sound. And so I was there to talk about Pink Floyd and Genesis and compare the two and
mm.
try to explain why they were both prog rock but didn't sound even vaguely similar,
Yeah, yeah,
indeed they don't. And so I was doing that, and I thought, well, that's a fair enough contribution to this event for
yeah.
charity. But what I didn't realize was that the people doing the sound and the visuals were going to take it to the nth degree, almost like this was in the 1970s. So
Yeah.
inside this magnificent towering church, you had the world's biggest PA system, which Mike Merrick and Alan Smythe had spent 2 weeks testing on and off to not only have it hugely
Gosh.
loud, like it was a Black Sabbath gig or something, but
Yeah.
also very clear. And
Mm,
they'd spent so much time, they got it to absolute perfection. And so when you were listening to Pink Floyd and Genesis at the event last Thursday night in
mm.
Kirkby Overblow, it was like you were hearing a live band. You actually forgot this was not a live band. It was just, it was the best. The sound was good enough to have been an outdoor festival for a big band. It was absolutely amazing. It was just jaw-droppingly good. You
Am I-
heard things that you'd never heard before.
So great. I mean, right. So these are, let's say, they were what, 1970s musical recordings, sounding better presumably
Mm,
than they did in the 1970s.
that was it, basically. Yeah, it was just amazing.
So
It was almost moving. That's how good it was. It's quite emotional.
So, what did you hear that you wouldn't have heard before? I mean, bearing in mind we still don't have sound as good as
You heard,
dogs have.
you heard
Dogs still hear different
you heard,
words.
yeah,
So,
you
were
heard
you
every
hearing detail? Were
instrument.
you hearing detail?
Yeah, you heard all detail you couldn't usually hear.
Yeah.
Every instrument was louder and clearer, and things which were a tiny sound on the recording, you could hear fully. That's how good the sound system was. So you're hearing bits you'd never heard before. It was
Brilliant.
just amazing. But I think the strange thing is that because Pink Floyd featured in this event at All Saints Church,
Yes.
well, Pink Floyd themselves made their reputation in 1966 when they were the house band for the new underground culture in London. And where
Mm.
did they used to play regularly in 1966? All Saints Church in Powys Gardens in London. So the All Saints bit came back, but just not in the same the same city or town.
Oh, I like that. I like that. There's a nice circular motion to that. So, Graham, will you perhaps go back there and do more events there, given
I would have thought so, yeah.
I mean, the likelihood, isn't it, if they're going to be doing further fundraising?
It's unlikely to be the Ramones, though. I'm not sure the church is ready for the Ramones.
When the Ramones? Well, who knows? So,
Mm.
Graham, why is it called Overblow? Kirkby Overblow? Do we know?
Good grief. Was it windy one day?
I guess it must be, mustn't it? But I mean, overblown is what some people accuse prog rock of being. But obviously, you didn't feel it was Kirkby
Oh, I
Overblown
see
at
what you're
all,
doing
or
there, Charles.
not?
That
Yeah,
is a great little link
that's
there
what I
because you're
thought.
right. Prog was about being overblown. It was about being fearlessly overblown.
It
And
was.
yeah, you're right. So that's perfect.
Now, I can't believe, Graham, you're going to discuss Christmas on. Well, I don't think we're not even turned over the calendar yet. We turn over the calendar on Wednesday to welcome it to November, and you're wanting to talk about Christmas songs. What on
Yeah,
earth
but
has brought this
come
on?
on. Let's face it. First of all, it's only about 6 days to Christmas, so Christmas is definitely around the corner.
It's fair to say, are they? By the way, have they started playing the songs in the supermarkets yet? I hadn't spotted it this weekend, but
Um,
what about you?
it rings a bell that I've been somewhere with the dead. It may have started. I don't know.
That rings a
But
bell
the
because that's
reason I
usually
brought
what
this
happens
up
on
is
Christmas records. There's always a
yeah.
bell if it's Wizard.
The
Yeah.
reason I brought this up is because, as usual, I get sent emails in my capacity as the Harrogate advertiser
Yes.
from various firms trying to push statistics and figures
Yes.
in the hope you'll do a story based on that, then plug their website. So this latest one is about Christmas song
And so this
royalties,
is
and
statistically
it came
based.
from someone.
Hmm.
Yeah, it came from someone called slotscalendar.com. You've never heard of. Slots calendar
Sports
could be
calendar.
something to do with gambling. Could definitely be gambling. Don't know. And they worked out that the top Christmas song of all time, in terms of streaming on Spotify, is Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas, which has had 1.8 billion streams so far.
All I want is never to hear that
It's a lot
song
of
at
streams.
Christmas. That's all I want.
Yeah, but that is major. According to according to this website, that has made Mariah Carey £5.62 million as a result of those streams.
Extraordinary. So where did I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas feature, which is the one that we, traditionally is seen as the most Christmassy of all Christmas songs.
Can't remember. I think it's in the top 20, but
Mm.
I basically ignored it because obviously I was fascinated by Ariana Grande's, inclusion and Michelle Bublé's. The Bublé's in the top 10, and obviously Justin Bieber and Band Aid and Chris Ria's there and Andy Williams and Wham and John and Yoko are still there with Happy Christmas War is Over, and
I,
they have made £1.764 million
huh?
by streaming on Spotify for that song.
So I'm not aware that of the oeuvre of Christmas from Ariadne Grande. What is her Christmas oeuvre?
Well, I'm not only not aware what it is. I'm not really interested. S I just want to see if there's any interesting in it, and Grande doesn't do it for me.
No,
Uh,
fair enough.
but the only cool track,
No grande statement from you. That's
yeah, no Grande standing for me. That sounds like some terrible Spanish pun. That's rubbish. But anyway, the only cool thing in the top 20 is the Pogues' Fairytale in New York.
Did you see, by the way, that Sharon Shannon's band is going to do, I think it's a tour with loads of people connected with Shane MacGowan playing all Shane MacGowan's songs. Have you seen about that?
Well, that's a bit like having the Sex Pistols reform and having somebody from Arctic Monkeys as lead singer. I'm sure it'd be quite an enjoyable experience, but it really wouldn't be the Sex Pistols.
No, I mean, I think, I mean, it's Cater Reardon is one of the musicians that's going to be involved, which is interesting.
Yeah, yeah, but it shows us some credibility to it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, also because I mean that didn't particularly end well between Pogues and Cater Reardon, did it?
No, I can't remember the details, and let's not drag them back up.
No, no, fair enough. Now, Graham, this week, one of the most significant moments in the history of grit, the grit industry in York has happened. Uh, there was a picture of a certain lead singer of Shed Seven,
Mm.
Rick Witter, now renamed as Mr. Rick Gritter,
Mm.
on the side of the soon to be, no doubt, in use once winter's here, gritting machines of York. And I think good on the good on I think good on them for coming up with this as Shed Seven have had such a year that who could have thought that that would now include Rick Witter being turned into Rick Gritter?
Yeah, but it gets better than that. LNER, when the recent album got to number one, put a display message in York Station
Hmm.
congratulating Shed Seven to making number one. So that they've become a cultural phenomenon, at least in Yorkshire,
Well,
in a
what
way
did
that they
what did
weren't.
LNER do? What did LNER do? What have they done?
They put a message of congratulating rather than putting a message up saying like we apologise for the delay for the 6:15 train to London. It was a message congratulating Shed Seven for reaching number one on the album charts.
That's
So it
fantastic.
shows you how big Shed Seven now are.
Well, of course, I mean, Shed Seven is named after a railway shed, isn't it? So
That's true, yeah.
it's hand in hand.
Also, some local,
So now, Graham, just briefly on Shed Seven.
yeah, the big gigs coming up.
So playing well, I'm going to go and see them in Hull rather than in Leeds.
But
Uh,
they're also playing Museum Gardens next summer. Oh no, that's not right. There's
no,
going to yeah, Carrot, no Carrot. You're right.
no, they're not going to play that, but they are going to
No,
play.
no.
They're going to play O2 Academy Leeds. They're going to play Hull City Hall. I think it's Hull City Hall from memory. And of course, right at the end of all their touring, Rick and Paul are going to play at Huntington Working Men's Clubs. All tickets are gone for that, of course.
Oh
And
wow.
basically, most 2 nights of acoustic shows. I think December 21 and
Mm,
22. I
mm,
think that is
mm,
to bring to an end a quite remarkable year for them.
mm.
Who could have predicted?
No, when Rick was on our show a year ago talking about the not the last album, but the second last album that
Mm,
came out,
mm,
you know, there was no idea in his head that they were
no.
going to be so big.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think it's been one of these. It's been one of the music stories of the year, and it's had national attention as well. Thank goodness for that, and about time
Mm,
too.
mm.
Now,
It's like a triumph of the underdog. It's what it is.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So now, Graham, number 7 in the topics for this evening. The weird thing about Procol Harum's number one hit, "A Wider Shade of Pale." I always thought the weird thing about it is what the hell did any of those lyrics mean? I thought that's what was weird about it.
Well,
You
yeah, the lyrics were obviously like slightly drug inspired, slightly inspired
exactly.
by a night out at the Bag of Nails that Procol
Yeah,
Harum
yeah,
were probably engaged in drinking lots.
yeah.
That fashionable club in London that the Stones and the Beatles would
Mm,
hang out at.
mm,
The lyrics sort of smacking that with a little bit of like Greco-Roman poetry influences.
yeah.
And the tune itself is stolen from Bach.
It is. It
But
is.
Gary Brooker's piano line and singing on that song is so magnificent. It still sounds fantastic now. And it
Mm,
got to number one in June 1967.
mm,
But the interesting is that I saw the video that came out with the song at the time
yeah.
recently, and sure, there's like part of the video is Procol Harum just playing their instruments. Part of the video is Procol Harum wandering around the ruins of an abbey or a
Yeah.
monastery outdoors to go with the sort of religious feel of the actual tune. But the other part of the video, and this is like a number one hit on top of the pops, the other part of the video is footage of the Americans bombing Vietnam, which it'd
Oh.
be a bit like Ed Sheeran having a big hit or Taylor Swift with had footage from Gaza or Ukraine all over the video for the song, which of course doesn't happen these days.
No. So a Vestal Virgin, Graham. How many of them
Hmm.
were there in the song?
Was it six?
Oh, was it 6 or 16?
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah. Mm. Well, it
Anyway,
changes from drink to drink. Depends how much you had to
the
drink.
Vestal Virgins or Vestals, Latin Vestales, singular Vestalis, were priestesses of Vesta, a virgin goddess.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what that was.
That's news to me.
A virgin goddess of Rome's sacred hearth and its flame. In the 2nd century AD, Roman statue of a Virgo Vestalis Maxima, National Roman Museum. There we are. The Vestals were unlike any other public priesthood. They were chosen.
They're actually one of my favourite priesthoods.
They were chosen before puberty from several suitable candidates, freed from any legal ties and obligations to their birth family, and enrolled in the Vestal Priestly College of 6 priestesses. They were supervised by a senior Vestal, but chosen and governed by Rome's leading male priest, the Pontifex Maximus. In the imperial era, this meant the emperor.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub-production.